Yes sir, it is countdown day once again, and I'm going to tell you right now, when we do this countdown, which will be the 10 most underrated Transformers characters, this may be the wildest, craziest round of voting that we have ever had for any question. And of course, these are always amassed by votes collected all across social media from you guys. I put out the question, I count up the answers, I present them to you. So without any further ado, we're going to get into something that became much different than I originally anticipated. The top 10 most underrated Transformers characters in the latest GotBot Counts Down. Hey all, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, your most humble of hosts, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot. As always, please like, comment, share, of course subscribe, and while you're at it, baby, light 'em up and hit that notification bell. That's right, because it lets you know when content of all sorts goes up here on the channel, and it helps me out a ton. Check out Machinery of Man, The Everything Factor, Transformers Collectors NL, the Autobot family, as well as Transformers vs. DC Universe vs. G.I. Joe. Have a look for me everywhere across social media. See what we offer through Teespring. And of course, check us out on Patreon. And this is the countdown for the 10 most underrated Transformers characters. And when I put the question out, and for those unaware that are seeing this, whatever the question for a countdown is going to be, I put it out sometime on Monday. And voting lasts about 48 hours until midnight my time on Wednesday. Some people try to vote after the fact, but the voting has a window, folks. You gotta keep your eyes open, but it's always early half of the week. And when I put this question out there, I put it out with the idea that a lot of kind of underutilized or under-recognized characters were going to get votes. Little did I realize that everyone from Venom and Chop Shop and the other deluxe Insecticons to Lever, talked about out of left field, to who else? To Whirl, to Escargon, probably my favorite, to Movie Q, as well, to my surprise, characters like G1 Mirage got votes, and Galvatron and Blitzwing. I never expected that because I thought that they were more high profile. So, you know what we're going to do first? We're going to do the honorable mentions. However, we have a list of honorable mentions. Usually I give you 5. This entire list that I'm actually going to read off are all the honorable mentions that got the exact same vote. All of these honorable mentions were 1 vote away from being on the countdown. So, all of these got the exact same vote. The honorable mentions include Transformers Prime Beast Hunters Predaking, as well as Robots in Disguise Skybite, Twin Twist, Ricochet, Energon Hotshot, specifically Energon Hotshot. No other version, specifically Energon Hotshot, which I found very strange. Revenge of the Fallen Jolt, Swerve, specifically the IDW version, as well as Rewind, specifically the IDW version. Deathsaurus, Armada Sideways, Defensor, Computron, Breakdown from, of course, the Stunticons, Wheelie, G1 Wheelie at that, Scamper, and IDW Skids. All of those had the exact same number of votes. All of those were just under the cutoff for the countdown. And in fact, on the countdown, the first half all got the same number of votes as well. This was a close race this time. So if all of those were honorable mentions, all the ones that I mentioned before were just ones that garnered votes, who actually made the countdown? Well, we're going to kick things off with number 10 first. Number 10 takes us to the aquatic mini-bot first, known as... That's right, it's good old Seaspray. That was my best Seaspray impression. What do you want? Seaspray came in at number 10. And I guess I could kind of see, like I thought in Season 2 he was fairly high profile. I mean, he had several episodes that he appeared in. He has a very distinctive voice. And he even had that episode where he fell in love with the fish lady. I can't remember all of the details or the name of the episode. You guys know which one I'm talking about. Ariana or something, I think was her name. Adriana? I don't know. I don't remember what it was. But a lot of people still felt like that he was underrated and underappreciated. Kind of shocked me, kind of surprised me. I thought he was more high profile, but I suppose he is lovable in his own way, and he probably could have appeared in more stories as more than just kind of background fodder. Maybe there should have been some more that were specifically focused on Seaspray. Who am I to argue with the way the votes go? But either way you cut it, this guy takes number 10. Now, number 9 is one of those classic characters that became a classic character along the way, despite not being from the G1 era, which, let's be realistic, most classic characters tend to come from. Every now and again, you get a few that eke their way in, and sadly, I don't actually have a physical representation of number 9. The closest I have is this, and in some countries, this is indeed seen as Lugnut. Yes, this is clobber, I know, but number 9 is actually Lugnut, made famous from Transformers Animated. And the power and the loyalty of Lugnut cannot be denied. I think the reason underrated applies to Lugnut is because outside of Animated, when else in popularized fiction have we really seen Lugnut? In fact, when it comes to updates, how recently did we actually get an update of Lugnut? Some would argue, depending on the country you live in, that this was an update of Lugnut. But most of us know that this, if anything, is a shadow of what Lugnut truly is. And because he made such a lasting impact, despite really only appearing prominently in one fiction, he takes the number 9 spot. Number 8 comes to us from Beast Wars, and sadly I actually don't have this character at all, so I can't show a physical representation. Although in a way, number 8 is really two characters in one, because it is Tigerhawk, the mix of Tigatron and Airazor that became Tigerhawk. And my recollection is that Tigerhawk was very near the end of season 3. I personally tend to prefer Airazor and Tigatron as two separate characters, but since their story culminated in their amalgamation as one character, I can't argue the fact that perhaps that character, as powerful as it was underutilized. Maybe it's a character that would have benefited from appearing more in Beast Machines? I don't know if anyone really benefits from appearing in Beast Machines. But nevertheless, Tigerhawk takes the number 8 slot. And number 7 is either a G1 Jumpstarter, or perhaps if you're a fan of the Wreckers and more recent comics, and that's really the fiction where this character has become more popularized, you could say that number 7 is time to wreck and rule with Topspin. That's right, Topspin takes the number 7 slot. And again, I feel like because of the comics and because of Topspin's role with the Wreckers is my understanding, and if I'm wrong about that, somebody correct me on it, but I feel like the comics have really breathed new life into both of the Jumpstarters. Interestingly, Twin Twist was in the honorable mentions, and Topspin actually got one more vote than Twin Twist. I don't know. I always preferred Twin Twist personally, but I grew up owning a G1 Twin Twist, so maybe that's where my soft spot for that character comes in. I didn't own Topspin, though I knew a couple of people who did. Nevertheless, when these guys were announced, I was totally in for it. I did not know their current fiction, but I will say this. These Generations offerings, these Titans Return offerings, are among the absolute best of that entire line, and I would venture to say the absolute best of the Transformers line within the last decade. And maybe for characters that aren't so prominent, getting such a fantastic offering in plastic and getting a second life in more modernized fiction, that's good enough to snag the number 7 spot. Now, number 6 is one that actually shocked me to no end. It is Cliffjumper. Cliffjumper? I think a lot of people voted for Cliffjumper because for whatever reason, after G1, and I suppose in a way in conjunction with G1, poor Cliffjumper has always been saddled with being a guy who is brave, strong for his diminutive size, a great scrapper, a great fighter, but he always ends up having his spark extinguished. Though, to be fair, there were several people who voted for this guy and specifically said not the Transformers Prime version, not the Bumblebee movie version, the IDW version. Granted, this is the Hot Soldiers version. For me, Cliffjumper is always going to be, almost synonymous with season 1 of Transformers from the G1 era. However, he does have a very loyal and almost rabid fan base based on his appearances from the comic book. Even outside of that, other votes that rolled in for him often cited the fact that he was so brave and never really got the respect he deserved because he's always the kind of sacrificial lamb. And I guess for that reason, he takes the number 6 spot. And here we are at the halfway mark, baby. So who's going to take the number 5 slot? Well, it takes us right back to G1 and this guy, Trailbreaker. And Trailbreaker, granted, this is the Combiner Wars version. This is the only Trailbreaker I currently have. Come on, Earthrise Trailbreaker. A lot of people for Trailbreaker cited that he was rough and tumble and rugged, but that he was always kind of jovial and everyone's friend. Plus, he could make force fields. And perhaps that is a skill that wasn't used as often as it should have. Kind of like Skywarp's sky-warping ability. A lot of people said that he was a great follower and kind of, great in the ranks, falling in line, but that maybe because of, his durability as well as his force field abilities, he should have been featured more prominently than what he was, and for that reason he would be considered underappreciated and therefore underrated. And number 4 is someone who, while certainly not prominent in North America especially, had such a unique gimmick and characterization that he has endured down through the years. And I'm talking about Punch, Counterpunch. So many people voted for this guy and said, you know what? While he had some more fiction in Japan, and while some comics have sort of helped flesh things out, overall, Punch, Counterpunch is a fabulous idea and represents internal struggle of good and evil that should be a super prominent character that should have so many prominent stories and could provide such a rich tapestry of storytelling in so many ways. Everybody pointed to the fact that it's a brilliant idea, the whole double agent thing. A brilliant idea to have internal struggle of good and bad, and it's something that at no time has it truly been capitalized on for how wonderful of an idea in storytelling it could be. And for that reason, he would definitely be considered underrated. And that brings us, baby, to the top 3. And number 3, baby, would probably say to me to chill out, to calm down, and to relax. Stop being so high-strung, because number 3 is none other than Beachcomber. I would venture to say that most people remember Beachcomber pretty explicitly for his appearance in the Golden Lagoon episode and his commune with nature and his lamentations after that nature was destroyed for a natural resource, that being the Golden Lagoon itself. There's a lot of messages in there about protecting our environment and natural resources, and a lot of deeper messages there about war and combat and the effect that that has on nature as well. I feel like so many more stories could have been told with Beachcomber, but besides for that one, he mostly just sort of appeared in the background. Nevertheless, everybody sort of remembers the hippie spirit that he had. He has appeared sometimes in comics, and he does have a richer history there. But because of his unique characterization, and because really we haven't had anything including Beachcomber in any sort of popularized way since the days of G1, he would definitely be considered underrated and at a high level of being underrated, and that's why he snags the number 3 spot. That only leaves us with 2. And I'm not gonna lie, while I never ever vote on these questions myself, because I feel like my own voting would taint the results, I do have, at times, certain characters or certain themes or whatever that I'm pulling for to appear on the countdown. Sometimes it succeeds and sometimes it don't. I go back to the Trios one, and I'd hoped that Big Powered was going to appear on it. And guess what? I don't even think he made the honorable, or they made the honorable mentions. But this is an example of one that if this was my own personal countdown, probably would have snagged the number 1 spot. It's a character I loved in G1. It's a character that I know nothing about from any fiction, though I assume this character has appeared in the comics a bunch of times. I don't know, but it's one that I was absolutely tickled to get in the Siege line, that being none other than Spinister, the sinister Spinister. And this version of Spinister, you will notice, has 2 target masters. These are both customs. a custom hair splitter, a custom singe. Fun fact, singe never did, an official singe never did appear in my neck of the woods first nor last, sadly. So I just took it upon myself, made my own. I loved Spinister. I loved the gaudy yellow colors. I loved the kind of menacing head sculpt, and I loved all of that in G1, and said for the last decade, man, I'd love an update to Spinister, and I was not disappointed. This is fantastic. This is a fantastic update, a fantastic offering for a character that I honestly believe could really be something special if presented in fiction. As a matter of fact, I would make the argument that most, if not all, of the double target masters could make for some very, very compelling storytelling. Because most people really only know his plastic iteration and next to nothing from his somewhat limited fiction, he would definitely be considered underrated, and he takes the number 2 slot. So if he takes the number 2 slot, who takes number 1? Now, number 1 absolutely blew me away. I did not expect it. The voting for number 3, number 2, and number 1 was close. Real close. It was fun to see the race play out. But in the end, number 1 took it by only a couple of votes. I never ever would have expected this character to be the, as voted on by you guys, the number 1 most underrated character. The dumpy, the frumpy Cosmos takes the number 1 slot. And a lot of people pointed out the fact that, look, he had this weird alt mode that was rarely used and rarely useful, but when it was used and useful, it really saved the Autobots from oblivion. I think a lot of people point out to an episode where he basically guides them from crashing into the sun, if I'm not mistaken. He had this kind of dumpy, frumpy sort of robot mode. He had a weird accent. Rarely would anybody list Cosmos as their favorite character. However, if it wasn't for him, all the Autobots that we do know and love would have been burnt to a crisp in the sun. And for that reason alone, he would be considered underrated. He'd done something so important that one time. Besides that, his positioning and his storytelling has been somewhat lackluster. Perhaps we're due for a resurgence of Cosmos. I will say this though, while this is my custom Generations version of this mold, and it came out again as a re-release in Titan's Return, and there was even the Japanese Legends version, this version of Cosmos is hands down fantastic, fun, functional, with a great transformation. Because he only really had one prominent action that people tended to kind of talk toward when they voted, he would be considered underrated and takes the number 1 slot. And that's it. We have another countdown in the books as voted on by you guys. This one blew me away. I did not at all expect this to pan out the way that it did. I did not expect the characters to pan out the way that they did. I did not expect that there would be votes for characters such as, and just looking back here now, Ion Storm and Misfire and Aimless. Black Arachnia got votes. Going down, who else? Roadbuster got votes. Hoist got votes. Grapple, Holler got votes. Rad got votes. What else? Robots in Disguise, Optimus Prime, or Fire Convoy, if you will, got votes. It was amazing to see this one unfold. I'd love to know if your favorites made it, or if they didn't make it, because this one was wide open, baby, wide open. I appreciate you coming by and giving me some of your extremely valuable time. If you're in a position to help the channel to grow, there's a donate link down in the description. Of course, you can check out what we offer through Teespring, and you can visit our Patreon. Don't forget, somehow, some way, each and every day, you do make a difference. Please hit that subscribe button. Stick around, have fun with us if you haven't done so already. And I look forward to the next time, baby, that you and I get together to have another visit, either in the live streams on Thursday nights at the stop motion premieres, or the old-fashioned way, baby, right here inside the videos.